change the story you tell, and you will change the life you live. So as some of you know, I got invited to Stanford to give a talk about my story and my survival story. And I thought it's a good opportunity to tell you what my talk was about and how people reacted to it. So, I strongly believe that the mind is a storytelling machine. That story is the fundamental language of our brain. And the reason for that is that the mind or the brain learned much earlier to think in stories than in other language. Like the first cave paintings, for example, in the south of France are approximately 30,000 years old. And the first language, like the hieroglyphs, they're around 3,500 years old. So the brain started to think and structure information even before it's used language, written at least. We store memories in stories, and we store our dreams in stories. Like stories is like the way how we structure information. Now, we also have to know that the story that we perceive is never what the reality is. It's always a distortion, like your perception through your eyes or ears or smell is distorted, and then which stimuli you pay attention to. It's always like a selection. You can never perceive the whole spectrum of stimuli that are out here in the world. So you will always have a distorted perception of like what's going on. So in other way, or in other words, you anyhow telling yourself a story. Now, the story is something very powerful because you can stick to one storyline or another, and that's up to you, that's your choice. And when I realized this concept that it's actually me, or in this case it's you, who can select like which story you're listening to, it's actually really powerful, because if stuff goes wrong, at least you always have this choice, that the ultimate choice that you always can select which story you're telling yourself or which story you're listening to. And here comes the cool part. Like, you don't have to become Steven Spielberg, okay? It just matters that you become aware which storyline or which program you're listening to in your internal Netflix library. And that's a very simple concept. It's like you don't have to go out and say, I'm gonna do this and that. No, just be aware which story you're listening to, and it will change how you live your life. So in other words, change the story you tell, and you will change the life you live. So the talk was perceived very well, which of course I'm very grateful for, because these people here in Stanford from the Cancer Survivorship Program, they're actually doing an amazing job, and it was truly an honor to be part of their kickoff event and the keynote speaker, and to spread a message of hope and also honesty, like showing that I think when it comes to this concept of change the story and then you live better, I was really pointing out that there is always a backstory. And also in my story, often people just see the finisher picture of the triathlon, and that's not the whole picture. I have also a backstory. I have many struggling times. Running and biking and swimming for me is not a heroic act. It is my personal strategy to cope with fear. And then once I finish the finish line and I do the triathlon, people put me on a pedestal and say, it's so heroic, but they don't see it's actually just my personal approach to cope with my own fear. And so I was really pointing out that we all have a backstory, and we should not be ashamed of that, and we should share that, because owning your story and your backstory is the first step to rewrite your story. And so I hope that you can do that too, and that this kind of video, or I will also link the talk somewhere here. Once it should be online, as they told me they recorded it, and I hope I can link that soon so you can see the full speech. And yes, like always, let me know what you think or how you are able to change your story, or if this is helpful. And I'm looking very much forward to see you when I'm back in the city before I head to my next destination, which will not be Europe. Okay, so much for that, and see you then next time. Bye bye, take care.